Welcome, Jaime Goff, to the Empathy Edge podcast. I have loved catching up with you before we started recording because it's been a few years since we last saw each other when you were working at Christus Health.
Yes, yeah, it has been. And thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to reconnect and have this
Yeah.
conversation today.
Well, you're going to share so much juicy wisdom with our listeners today because of the work that you've done there and then the work you do as an executive coach and a leadership strategist. You're going to talk about your book, The Secure Leader, discover the hidden forces that shape your leadership story and how to change them. So I'm really excited to dig into some of the specifics around that. But before we get into it, tell us your story. Tell us how you even got into this work. You've got a very rich background of
Yeah.
academia and practical applications. So talk to us about that.
Yeah, actually, you're right. But I've kind of been in a couple of different industries, and my career actually started in higher education and really psychotherapy. So my PhD is in couple and family therapy.
Hmm.
That's where I began my career. And really, the book that I just released in September of 2025, that book is kind of an outgrowth and continuation of the work I started doing when I was a PhD student in my doctoral program,
Yeah.
based in attachment theory and attachment based approaches, really to leadership. And of course, when I was couple and family therapist, it was really about parents and children, right? And parents are leaders of their children. And it was about my work back then was about helping them learn how to connect effectively and provide safety and security for their children as they
Hmm.
grow and develop. And then later on, I specialized in couples therapy. And what I realized was many of the dynamics around relationship safety
Hmm.
were very similar to what they were with parents and children, right?
Yeah.
Uh, and then later on, when I was first in leadership roles, I recognized some of those same dynamics in leadership between
Hmm.
leaders and their teams. And so eventually, all of that experience and all of that work led to this book. And really led to my interest in leadership and executive coaching, because I really was fascinated by
Hmm.
the parallels and how I could apply what I had, learned and,
Hmm.
all of my expertise from the other world of
Yeah.
psychotherapy and couple and family therapy specifically to the
Yeah.
world of team dynamics and leadership.
Yeah. Well, and it's so funny. I'm kind of chuckling as you're talking about all this because, as a parent of an 11-year-old, I did not study psychology and psychotherapy. I did for like a hot minute think I wanted to become a child psychologist when I was younger. So I was very interested in it and interested in what made people tick. But
Hmm.
I have found the parallels between what I'm learning about conscious parenting and partnership parenting so applicable to the work that I do with leaders and with
Yeah.
organizations. And, I try to bring it in without sounding like, I don't want to infantilize whatever you say that word
Sure,
of
exactly.
workers, but there is sort of a like
Hmm.
a caring relationship that's there of you trying to help a group of people live up to their full potential, which has
Yes.
a lot
Yeah.
of parallels with parenting. And it's why I've had some parenting coaches on the
Hmm.
show and child
Absolutely.
psychologists talking about how do we step into emotional intelligence? How do we undo and rewrite scripts from our past so that
Hmm.
we can be a better version of ourselves for the people that we're leading now, whether it's children or
Yes.
teams? So I'm excited to get into this.
Yeah.
Actually, that leads me to my first question to you of
Mhm.
what do you see as the impact of early experiences, whether it's early work experiences or early
Hmm.
family experiences, childhood experiences? How does that manifest in leadership traits and leadership behaviors, both positive and negative?
Yeah. I think that, the case I make in the book is that, especially our childhood experiences and our very early childhood experiences have a larger impact than we realize
Hmm.
on how we show up as leaders and really how we show up in all of our adult relationships, right?
Yeah.
And then also all of our experiences in relationships with other people inform how we see the world and how we see ourselves in the world and how we see other people. And I think that there are two fundamental questions
Hmm.
that really inform this that we're always asking ourselves, although it's on an unconscious level, right? It's not like
Hmm.
really thinking about these things intentionally, but we're always asking ourselves first, am I worthy? Am I worthy of love, attention, respect, dignity, all of those things, right? Am I worthy? And the second question that we're always asking ourselves is, are others trustworthy?
Mm.
And so those two questions together really form, you mentioned stories and scripts. They form kind of neural pathways, right, in our brains about how we interact with the people in our lives.
Hmm.
And so, with regard to early experiences, the experiences we have with our early caregivers, we're learning so much about the answers to those two questions in our own experience during that time. We're not thinking consciously about it because we don't have the capability to do that when we're very young, but it's still impacting us in really powerful ways that we don't realize. And
Hmm.
so, with the book, I was really trying to kind of bring that to light for people and to help
Hmm.
them to see how all of these things are connected
Hmm.
and provide them with a pathway to become more aware of those two questions, how they're responding to them, how they impact their leadership, specifically in my book, and
Hmm.
then what they can do to begin to kind of rewrite those neural pathways
Mm.
so that they can answer both of those questions more affirmatively.
I mean, that's so important. From the work that I've been doing, the first pillar
Mhm.
of effective and empathetic leadership is self-awareness and really understanding and
Mhm.
unpacking consciously what's going on for us. And it's so funny. Just this past weekend, I was having a conversation with somebody about some bad neighbors they had who were just engaging in behavior that was just cruel, right? And they're just like, we just don't understand why. And it always seems to go back
Mhm.
to that very simplistic idea of hurt people.
Yes.
And
Hmm.
if you even find that you're engaging in some negative behaviors towards other people, it's like being able to take that beat and look back at where is this coming from for
Hmm.
me? Like if my team is telling me that they're scared, and maybe they're not even telling you that they're scared, but you're losing engagement, you're increasing attrition, whatever it is, really being able to bravely and strongly take a look in the mirror and say, what's going on within
Yes.
me and how I show up that's impacting this scenario.
Yeah.
It may be that it's something going on for the other person, but you're the only common denominator in all the relationships that you
Right.
have, right? And so
Exactly.
I'm sure your business being called the empathic leader. I always
Hmm.
talk to leaders about empathy is actually not weak, it's strong. It requires great strength to be able to look at
Yes.
yourself and to be able to try to
Hmm.
identify those scripts
Yeah.
and say, I want to rewrite them.
Hmm. And I think even in my own, and I think that self-awareness is also part of what drove me to write the book, because as I
Mhm.
looked at my own leadership, I recognized some things that I was doing that were not going to be helpful
Mhm.
to my team members and the people that I worked with. So, for example, I grew up in, kind of my family of origin was one in which feelings we didn't talk about them,
Yeah,
right?
I
Like,
remember this part of the book. Yeah.
yeah, like you don't talk about feelings.
Hmm.
You stuff them down. You act like they're not there, and you certainly are not as emotionally expressive.
Right.
And if you were like really expressive emotionally, many times you ended up being punished for that.
Oh, wow.
And so that's what I observed, right? Like,
Yeah.
okay, this is not safe. It's not
Hmm.
safe to express your emotions. And it's also, it's bad. Like,
Right.
it's looked down on. You shouldn't do that.
Right.
So I had that belief. And I don't know that I was really aware of it at the time. But as I
Hmm.
started learning more about, some of these patterns and attachment styles, like I talk about in the book, I began to look at myself and I saw some of that.
Hmm.
And I realized that I used to have, and still do to an extent, and have to kind of intentionally be thoughtful, really be thoughtful about it,
Right.
because I had a bias from that experience
Yeah.
against people who were like
Yeah.
really emotionally expressive.
Right.
And what I realized is that that was problematic because that bias, if I have someone on my team who's emotionally expressive,
Hmm.
that bias is seeing that as like unhealthy, or there's something wrong with that,
Or
or that's bad, or
underperforming or
that's
their
right.
drama. Yeah. All the
Exactly.
things. Right.
They're dramatic, so I'm putting all these labels on them that I might be preventing them because I'm not investing in them, or I'm holding back, or I'm seeing them in a certain way. And I'm not providing the conditions in which they can really grow and flourish.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was, just one of the many,
Mm-hmm.
aha moments
Mm-hmm.
I had myself, in how kind of these scripts and these beliefs that I had developed in my childhood from my childhood
Mm-hmm.
experiences were showing up
Mm-hmm.
and potentially preventing me from being the best leader I could be.
Right. And also possibly preventing you from getting the best out of your people because then you're
Exactly.
creating an environment where they have to stifle their
Exactly.
natural abilities or
Their
talents or
authenticity.
inclinations, their
Yeah. Yeah.
authenticity. And so now you have someone operating at half their capacity,
Hmm.
which isn't the best thing to do as a leader, right? If
Right.
you want to increase
Exactly.
innovation and performance and all those things.
Hmm.
I have kind of a related question to that. What about the leaders who don't recognize that they need to rewrite
Hmm.
those unhelpful narratives? Like, let's say, I'm sure someone in the listening audience is dealing
Hmm.
with this right now. They either have someone reporting to them or someone they report to who they're like, wow, if they would actually listen to this episode, it'd be really good for them. But they're not even
Hmm.
there yet.
Hmm.
How do you get people to recognize it if they don't, especially in the workplace? What can someone do other than model it?
Yeah. And I think that's challenging, right? I think especially I'm thinking about like what direction is that coming from? Like if
Right.
you're a team member and you see your leader and you're like, wow, they
Yeah.
lack self-awareness.
Right. And you
That's
can't just be like,
challenging,
are you
right?
okay? They might not
Right,
take
right.
that very well, right?
To be like, hey, I'm seeing some patterns here. No,
Yeah.
or a lack of self-awareness. Um, so that can be a bit challenging.
Yeah.
I think if you are a leader
Hmm.
of maybe a leader of leaders, and you have leaders on your team where you're noticing some of this,
Hmm.
having conversation, and these are the conversations I have as a coach with the
Right.
folks I coach, right? Is I'm not necessarily going to tell them, outright, because that's not my job. I want to lead them to
Hmm.
that discovery,
Right.
but just, helping them see and think about the ways in which their behavior, whatever it is, might actually not only be hurting the people that they're working with, but
Yeah.
also hurting them. Like,
Hmm.
how is this behavior or this approach a barrier to you?
Yeah.
How will it limit you in terms of your ability to continue achieving your goals or moving up, whatever
Hmm.
that might be? How is it not serving you well? Those are the types of conversations I often have.
Hmm.
Like I said, with my coaching clients, is okay, you're doing these things and I see it and others see it,
Hmm.
but you're not quite seeing it. But how are you getting what you want?
Yeah.
Like,
Are
is
you
this
achieving your
approach
goals?
is
Yeah.
this approach helping you achieve your goals, or is it a barrier? So I try to help them, kind of
Right.
come to it that way, as
Right.
opposed to just,
Of course, yeah. Definitely
um,
pointing out the ROI of
right.
it's like
Yeah,
you
absolutely.
absolutely have a choice to continue
Can
operating that
continue
way.
doing
But
this.
what if you
Yes.
didn't?
Hmm.
What could you gain
Exactly.
if you didn't? And getting them,
Hmm.
that's the whole business case of the first
Yeah,
empathy book I wrote, The
exactly.
Empathy Edge, was like sort
Hmm.
of, okay, think about what's in it for you to
Exactly.
maybe adopt a different frame for this.
Hmm.
So I love that. And that's the thing is talking to people, whether I'm doing workshops or leadership development, is really about helping them understand, where is it benefiting them? Like, can they see that this has an impact on the business or on their leadership potential? Not that
Hmm.
any behavior is right or wrong from a
Right.
moral standpoint, but
Hmm.
just bringing it back, tying it back to the business impact or the
Hmm.
team impact or the performance impact seems to land really well, where you
Yeah.
can get them to at least, take a look at it
Hmm.
and say, I'll
Hmm.
consider
Yeah.
it. So,
Exactly.
um, so obviously your book is called The Secure Leader. So I want to talk a little bit about how insecurity impedes our ability to demonstrate empathy and to provide those environments where teams can flourish. So sometimes we tend to think our own insecurity is our own problem to deal with
Mm.
and that potentially no one else can see it but us. So talk to us a little bit about that and
Yeah.
how maybe the inverse of that too, kind of like what we were just talking about.
Hmm.
If you're having detrimental performance on your team, maybe looking at your level of security as a leader as a possible cause, right?
Hmm.
So tell us about
Hmm.
that relationship.
Yeah, yeah. So the first part, how does that insecurity show up? Like if
Hmm.
you're a leader and you're struggling with insecurity, how is it impacting like your team? So I think in the book, I talk about some different types of insecurity, two major types of insecurity, the first being anxious and the second being avoidant. So, how that shows up in your leadership kind of depends on your most dominant type.
Mm-hmm.
So, the first being the insecure anxious. And these are leaders who, generally speaking, kind of above and beyond anything else, they are looking for validation. They want to be validated themselves. They
Mm-hmm.
want to be liked. They tend to be people pleasers.
Mm-hmm.
And so when it comes to leadership and leading their teams, you can kind of already probably begin to see how this might have a negative impact, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because if all you want is to be liked, then you're not going to probably do the greatest job of giving your team constructive feedback, really helping them grow, see where they might have gaps, right? Because you're going to be so worried about, oh, if I give this feedback, they're not going to like me, they're going to be upset with me,
Mm-hmm.
that you're not likely to be honest and clear with them about their
Mm-hmm.
performance and how they're doing. And ultimately, that hurts them,
Yeah.
right? By not having that type of feedback.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of one example of how someone with an insecure, anxious style might actually be impacting their team in a negative way, even though it's their own insecurity and flows out of something they're looking for and need themselves.
Right.
The other type, the insecure avoidant style, these are the leaders who think no one else can do it as well as they can.
Mm.
And so their primary driving need is for control,
Yes.
right? I need to be in control. No one else can do as good a job as I can. Therefore, I'm not going to let anybody else really own a project, own a task, right? I'm going to, many times they'll micromanage because
Mm-hmm.
they want to make sure everything gets done exactly the way they want it to get done.
Mm-hmm.
And so, what happens in this situation, again, you end up stifling the growth and development of your team because you're holding on to so much control that you don't let go of the reins and let other
Mm-hmm.
people, you don't empower them, you don't let them experiment,
Mm-hmm.
innovate,
Mm-hmm.
learn and grow in that way. And then, you'll also create a lot of disengagement because you're holding so tightly. You're not giving them the opportunity to really make an impact
Yeah.
the way that they would probably like to. So
Yeah.
those are just, kind of two quick examples of
Mm-hmm.
how our own insecurity as leaders can end up
Mm-hmm.
impacting our team members in a negative way.
For sure. For sure. And it's that whole thing about, again, one of the other pillars of my model is clarity and
Hmm.
and the other is a decisiveness. And it's understanding that you're never going to make a decision that makes everybody happy. That decision doesn't
Right.
exist. And the goal is not to make people happy. The goal is to make a decision that's good for the business
Hmm.
and achieves your goals. And then your other job is to make sure you can bring people along on that decision, even
Yeah.
if it's just they disagree but commit,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
Being
Yep.
transparent about how it was made, explaining why it was made, why you can't do the other option. Being able to synthesize multiple points of view, but then ultimately you have to make a decision and you
Hmm.
can't be striving for the decision that makes everyone happy
Yeah.
because that's not your job as a
Right.
leader,
Right.
right?
No, it's not.
So,
And I
yeah.
think this relates a lot. I mean, I think our work is closely related in a lot of
Yes.
ways because I think, there's that, and this has been coming a lot in conversations I've been having with those I'm coaching and also as I'm doing workshops is
Hmm.
how do I, in those two forms of insecurity, it's like the extremes of am I nice or do I hold people accountable?
Yeah. It's the
Right?
either
Like people
or
create
model.
that either or
Yeah.
dichotomy. And so those who are, kind of have the anxious insecure style, they're like, they want to be nice.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what they overemphasize.
Uh-huh.
And sometimes those on the avoidant end of that insecurity continuum are like, I have to hold people accountable and
Right.
maintain a really tight control.
Right.
And then secure leadership is really about being able to take that both and approach. I
Yeah.
can both be
Yep.
kind, compassionate, empathetic, and I can
Uh-huh.
have high standards. I can make tough decisions.
Yep.
I can hold people accountable.
Amen. Yeah, I call that my both and leadership model
Yes.
because
Yeah.
it is.
Yep.
It's a continuum, and it's where are you on that continuum, and at the ends
Mhm.
of those continuums of that continuum is where you can negatively impact performance.
Yes.
You're aiming for the middle. So
Exactly. Yep.
I love that. Um, what can leaders do to increase their own sense of security? So that becomes the question,
Mhm.
right? Okay,
Mhm.
maybe I'm on either side of that spectrum. Um, what can I do so that I can have more calm and clarity and connection,
Mhm.
and not just sort of suffer through it or
Right.
think that
Yeah.
I'm broken or, my way or the highway? How do I unlearn those potential behaviors that were modeled or
Mhm.
narrated to me when I was younger? What are some practical ways they can work on that?
Yeah. Well, the first step, of course, you already said it, right? The first pillar is self-awareness. And so that's the first step is becoming familiar with what those patterns are for you. Like what patterns are you displaying? How are they
Hmm.
showing up? Where did it come from? So gaining some insight into that.
Hmm.
And, in the book, I have some journaling exercises and questions that people can work through
Hmm.
as well as a little assessment that they can take if they're like, I don't really know where I fit,
Yeah.
just so that they can get some awareness. And then once you have the awareness of like where you might land, what some of those patterns might be for yourself, I think the first step is self-regulation. And of course, that's one of the, well, both self-awareness and then self-regulation are two of the elements of emotional intelligence. But people are walking around dysregulated
Yeah.
all the time. It's really challenging to be regulated in the environment that we live in,
Hmm.
with all of the craziness that's just going
Yeah.
on in the world around us.
Hmm.
And we are inundated, right, with
Hmm.
stress-inducing
Hmm.
stimuli all the
Hmm.
time.
Yeah.
And it's hard work to be regulated, but
Hmm.
that's I think the first step is to learn self-regulation skills. And that, those that consists of things like just becoming familiar with your emotional experience. So many of us have very simple emotional vocabulary.
Hmm.
We don't really understand what we're experiencing. And if you don't understand what you're experiencing
Hmm.
emotionally, you're not going to be able to empathize with others. So, expanding your emotional vocabulary, working on really getting in touch with what you're feeling on a moment
Hmm.
by moment basis. And the thing is that, and you know this, but research shows that as you get better at naming your emotion, you get better at regulating it.
Hmm.
So, simply being able to name what you're feeling in the moment
Hmm.
helps you to calm down physiologically, helps to calm your nervous system down.
This is where the parallels to parenting come in, right? Because I
Yes.
remember when
Yeah,
my kiddo
absolutely.
was in preschool and like kindergarten, they gave them the feelings wheels
Hmm.
and helping them understand what that feel. So when I'm when my face is red and I'm getting so frustrated, my heart rate's racing and I ball up my hands and fists, they don't know that that means I'm angry unless
Hmm.
you give them the capacity to know that that's what
Right.
that means. Then as we get older and our emotions get way more nuanced, right?
Hmm.
Like I'm worried, I'm frustrated, I'm anxious, I'm like all the things in between. Like you said, naming it is like the first step
Yes.
to managing it and
Hmm.
navigating it. It's like, oh, I recognize what I'm feeling. And I haven't used this example in a while, but it's like kind of out there. Like decades ago, I remember the first time I realized what heartburn felt like.
Mm.
I was in my 20s, right? And I'd seen the commercials, I'd heard
Right,
about the
right.
drugs that help with heartburn, but I never recognized it in myself. I thought I was just having like a panic attack, or I thought like I was
Mm.
having a stomach ache. If you don't know what something feels like, and you can name it, you can't treat it. So all those
Exactly.
years I
Hmm.
suffered through what I later learned was heartburn because of something that I ate, and I could have just taken like a
Yeah.
remedy for it, right? But nobody had put that together for me because someone had
Hmm.
described it to me. But until I was able to feel it in my own body and
Mm.
name it and go, that's what heartburn feels like. And I
Yeah.
know that's like a silly example, but
No.
it's very
Yeah.
much related to, that's what grieving feels like, or that's
Hmm.
what disappointment feels like, or that's what, exclusion feels like. Unless you actually feel it in your body and then you recognize it enough to name it, just like
Hmm.
we learn everything in our world, right? I know
Yep.
green is green because somebody at some point showed me green and said, this is called green,
Hmm.
right? So I love how I mean, I don't love, it's interesting how we overlook these very simple ideas and strategies and we give ourselves unnecessary suffering
Hmm.
as a leader, as an employee, as, you know, someone working in an environment where we have to collaborate with other people.
Hmm. Yeah. And I mean that I've been even recently, kind of thinking of a couple of coaching clients where
Hmm.
that's, I mean, a lot of our work has been like, what are you feeling? Like, what is happening? And noticing, right? Because it's often not, there are the physiological cues and
Hmm.
signs, right? That you're getting angry or that you're getting frustrated, that you're feeling inadequate, whatever it might be, there are the
Hmm.
physiological cues. And so, I've been talking with a lot of my coaching clients, like, okay, when you're getting ready to have a meeting with this person,
Yeah.
what begins happening for you?
Hmm.
What do you notice in your body?
Right.
And then, okay, now that you see it coming in your body, then let's talk about what's the emotion, and
Hmm.
then what can you do? What are some things? What are some strategies? And this is where
Hmm.
the regulation strategies
Yeah.
come into play. What helps you calm down? When do
Right.
you feel? What are the types of things that you can do that help you feel peace?
What are some ideas? I mean, I know there's not
Mhm.
everything's going to work for everyone, but can you
Right,
give
right.
people sort of some examples of what some of those
Hmm.
strategies are?
Yeah. It can really be as, diverse as there are people in the world, right? But
Hmm.
just some kind of simple things, that things I often hear. Some people say, I need to get up and go take a quick walk outside. Like, or like with this particular client, coaching client I'm thinking of, it was like, okay, if you know you're getting ready to have a meeting with a person who you just feel stressful because things haven't gone well in the
Yeah.
past,
Yeah.
then what this client decided to do was that, okay, I'm going to take 15 minutes before that meeting, I'm blocking my calendar.
Uh-huh.
I'm not going to have a back to back when I know I'm having a meeting with this person. I'm
Right.
blocking my calendar. I'm going to do some deep breathing exercises, and she had some visualizations that were really helpful for her
Hmm.
so that she could get herself in a physiological state that was calmer before
Hmm.
walking into that meeting.
Right.
And it was really helpful to her.
Right.
So taking a walk, deep breathing, listening to music that,
Right.
calms you down or just makes you happy, whatever it might be.
Right.
Um, you know, I mentioned this strategy to someone else and they've used it like, oh, that really helped. Just like with the deep breathing, but putting your hand over your heart and thinking of someone that you love and that brings you comfort and joy,
Yeah.
and just thinking about a happy memory or a happy moment with them.
Right.
Anything that can help to calm your body physiologically.
Yeah.
What I've also been talking with people about too is that those in the moment strategies are really helpful.
Yeah.
However, there are a lot of daily habits that create more tolerance within
Hmm.
you for stressors too. So what are the daily habits? So the things that you're doing to build protection
Hmm.
around yourself from being triggered
Yeah.
emotionally in a negative way. And
What are
so
some of those?
the things like sleep habits, right? Making
Mm.
sure you're getting enough sleep, making sure that you're nourished, right? We all know we all get hangry from time to time,
Yep.
and that's not it's not
It's not
pretty,
good for
right?
anyone. Yeah.
Making sure that you're nourished, exercise, journaling, just and again, those look a little different for everybody in terms of
Right.
what works well. But honoring and protecting those daily habits can really protect you from having emotional reactions that may not serve you well.
For sure. For sure.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, no one's good when they're operating at
Mm.
minimal capacity.
Right.
And kind of again, back to parenting is that
Hmm.
thing of like, are you your best self when you're tired and hungry? No. So you've got to fill that container
Hmm.
so that you
Yes.
have the grounding and the strength to see what's going on for someone else. Because if
Hmm.
not, you're in survival mode. You don't care what's
Yeah.
going on for other people. You're
Mm.
just trying to, you're in self-preservation. This is
Yeah.
why self-care is the second
Yeah.
pillar, right?
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
to your point, and I always bring this up when we're talking about this, like you said, it looks different for everyone. And for some leaders I've spoken to, that looks like for them to recharge their tank or take that moment, it's something more active. It's,
Hmm.
it's exercising, it's rock climbing, it's training for a marathon, it's, doing jumping jacks for a little bit. So
Yep.
some people need to like increase their activity to
Hmm.
sort of deal with it. Other people might need meditation or yoga or the deep breathing.
Hmm.
And so it's about finding what works for you. And that it
Yeah.
kind of again goes back to self-awareness.
Hmm.
Part of self-awareness is figuring out which of these strategies work best for you,
Yes. Yeah. And you
right?
have to practice too. I think that's,
Right.
I think sometimes people say, oh, well, I tried that
I'm
once
done.
and it
Yeah.
didn't work for me. And it is, right? It's a
Right.
practice and you have to have some commitment to it
Yeah. Yeah.
in order for those things to really begin working for you.
For sure. I mean, we don't give up on sleeping because we had like one or two bad nights of sleep. Like we try again,
Right.
right? So
Hopefully.
I love that. I did want to ask about there was a quote I loved in your book
Mm,
that said that we attempt to solve adaptive challenges with a
mm,
technical solution. So you were talking about, people who take the leadership advice, right? You and I both do leadership workshops.
yeah.
And we can give great workshops, but
Hmm.
there's only so much we can do in an hour or 2 hours, right? We can give
Right.
strategies, we can give tools. And some people might try those things and it doesn't work for them. So can you
Hmm.
explain what you mean by that phrase of
Yeah.
you're attempting to solve adaptive challenges with a technical solution?
Yeah, I think many times the biggest problems that leaders encounter, they are adaptive, not technical. And what I mean by that is that it's more about kind of who they are as a leader
Mm-hmm.
than it is about the tasks that they do,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And you kind of see the classic example of this. We see it all the time. Well, every industry you see it, but like in healthcare, because of course I spent
A long
quite a bit
time
of
there.
time in healthcare. Like in healthcare, you have an amazing nurse. She's an amazing bedside nurse, like top performer, so good at her job. And she gets promoted into a people leader role.
Mm-hmm.
And it's awful, right? She has a hard time engaging her team. She has a hard time holding them accountable. And that's because she has a lot of technical skills,
Right.
but adaptively, in order to step into a leadership role, it requires kind of a change in thought processes and mindset, and to some extent, identity, really kind of thinking about identity instead of having a step-by-step approach. So that's what I mean by that. And so I think adaptive solutions are those that do rely quite a bit on self-reflection, building self-awareness,
Right.
really thinking about your mindset, the beliefs that drive you as a leader, and how
Mm-hmm.
you might need to shift those in
Mm-hmm.
order to be more effective in that role.
I love that. I mean, I think that does really help a lot of people who are like, but I've tried the
Mm.
techniques and
Hmm.
it doesn't work for me. And it's because it's almost like you're trying to put a band-aid on something
Right.
that
Yeah.
requires
Hmm.
stitches, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
You might need
Yeah.
to go a little
Yeah.
bit deeper than just, oh,
Exactly.
let me just do this thing and everything will be fine,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Um, the last question I want to ask you is you talked about, there was another quote in the book where you talked about our brains needing stories. And
Mm-hmm.
it's towards the beginning of the book,
Yeah.
and how our brains need stories to make sense of the world, whether we're even aware of what those stories are or not.
Hmm.
And you said the most important job of the brain is, am I pronouncing this right? Allostasis. So can you explain what that is and how it
Yeah.
impacts our ability to lead effectively?
Yeah. So that's all about prediction, right? So our brain's job is to help us predict what's going to happen next.
Hmm.
And that comes from, evolution, right? You always hear people talk about like, oh, when you're like running away, trying to escape from tigers because it's about to kill you, right? And
Right.
so because of that, like those experiences are really embedded within our like human experience, not
Hmm.
necessarily any one individual's experience. Our brains job, a lot of our brain's job is to make predictions.
Hmm.
And so those predictions are made based on past experiences. And that's where those stories come into play. Like my example of, okay, my story is emotional expression is a bad thing.
Right.
You get punished if you express yourself emotionally.
Hmm.
So, therefore, like the story I created was that that's bad and I'm going to avoid it. And
Right.
people that do that,
I'm going
we
to
need to
avoid
be
them. Yeah.
wary of them, right? Like there's something
Yeah.
wrong. I'm going to be wary. So, and then, if I have people in my life who are very emotionally expressive, and I think, like I say in the book, they might that one person was unreliable or didn't follow through, then my brain is kind of creating this story that
Right.
everybody who has that characteristic
Right.
is going to disappoint me,
Yeah.
not be reliable, not
Yeah.
follow through. So our brains, they do this naturally. It's not something that, it doesn't mean there's something wrong with you that your brain does this in terms of
Right.
making those predictions. But it is something that once you're aware of it, if you become aware of those stories, those
Yeah.
patterns that you're telling yourself, what your brain is using to predict what other
Right.
people are going to do in the moment, then you can begin kind of questioning that and taking that story apart, deconstructing it, and
Right.
saying, okay, maybe this story has been helpful for me in some situations and circumstances, but maybe it's also been harmful. And
Yeah.
where are the places where it's not been validated, right? Like,
Yeah.
where has this not been true? So again, just beginning to
Right.
deconstruct that story so that you're training your brain to make different predictions,
Right.
um, or to question
To
the automatic
question, I was going to say,
predictions. Yeah, to
this is very
question the
much linked
automatic predictions.
with unconscious bias and
Yeah,
us
absolutely,
understanding like the
absolutely.
reason I don't want to hire this person is because
Hmm.
of their gender or their ethnicity
Right.
or their religion or
Hmm.
whatever, and really getting yourself to take a step back and say, why is that really
Hmm.
true in this
Right.
situation? Because our brain, you know, according to Kahneman's work, right, is it's
Hmm.
going to take the path of least resistance
Exactly.
unless we interrupt the pattern
Hmm.
and question it. And this is what's happening a lot with, post pandemic. The reasons there's a lot of leaders snapping back to bossism, as I like to say, there was all this
Hmm.
great progress done on empathetic leadership during the pandemic. And then for some people, it's like, oh, let's go back. You
Hmm.
had your fun being treated like a human. Now it's time to go back to work. It's fear. It's because of those stories. The only way to
Hmm.
get work done is if I can see people in the office,
Hmm.
right? The only people who are committed are the ones who work past 5 o'clock and volunteer for all these things within the company. That's the
Hmm.
only way they can show they're committed, right? This person is not contributing a lot because they don't speak up in meetings
Right. Hmm.
versus they're probably just an introvert and have a lot of good ideas, but they need to marinate on things first.
Hmm.
So all of those little micro conversations we're
Yeah.
having, of those, and this I love this, it's a biological explanation
Hmm.
for how our brain works, or a
Hmm.
neuropsychological
Hmm.
explanation, is to know that it happens to everyone and it's okay. Where we master it is when we learn to recognize it.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
And question it.
Yes, yes.
Hmm.
So as we do wrap up, what's sort of your last golden nugget, for someone's like, yeah, I think I'm not best served by the habits I've created. I
Hmm.
might need to look inward. What's an immediate action or two they can take right now, other than buying your book? But what can they do to kind of explore this? Because, and I say that in all seriousness, because you have some great
Yeah.
exercises and
Hmm.
assessments,
Hmm.
and you also have a freebie you're giving away of like a
Yes. Yeah.
companion journal. So
Hmm.
folks, I really do encourage you to pick up her book, The Secure Leader. But what's something for folks listening that they can take away with them for tomorrow?
Yeah. Yeah. If you want to, if your listeners want to, maybe gain some insight or self-awareness, doesn't require a purchase of any kind. I do also have a free assessment on my website that they can go and take.
Oh, great.
It's my website is www.drjamiegoff, and Jamie is JAIMEGOFF.com. If they go to my website, there's a secure leader style scan and anybody can take it. So there's no access code or anything like that. And it will give them a sense of whether they're displaying those insecure patterns, so
Uh-huh.
anxious or avoidant, or if their, most dominant pattern is secure. And so it
Yeah.
will give them a little bit of insight. So that might be, kind of a pretty quick and easy thing that
That's
they
a
can do.
great
It's a
first
short
step.
assessment.
Yeah.
I think it's like 25, 26 questions. So it's
Uh-huh.
very short. And they can get some idea of where they're sitting. And then that
Hmm.
might give them some insight on next steps that they could take.
I love it. I love it. Jamie, I could talk to you for so much longer, but we have to go. So I just want to thank you so much for sharing your insights and your wisdom with us today. Thank you for the book. It's called The Secure Leader. Discover the hidden forces that shape your leadership story and how to change them. We'll put all the links to your website and to your LinkedIn and to this free assessment in the show notes. So thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
thank you for your time today.
Yes, thank you for having me, Maria.
And thank you, everyone, for listening to another episode of the Empathy Edge podcast. If you like what you heard, you know what to do. Please rate, review, and share it with a friend or a colleague. And until next time, please remember that cash flow, creativity, and compassion are not mutually exclusive. Take care and be kind.